Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Steelers nail the perfect five-finger punch in latest five-round mock draft. The Senior Bowl wrapped up last week, the NFL Combine is fast approaching, and the NFL Draft is only a couple of months away. With draft buzz already heating up, this class will be a crucial one for Omar Khan and company as they look to strengthen the roster for both immediate success and long-term sustainability. In this five-round mock draft, the board couldn't have fallen more perfectly for the Steelers, addressing every key need while landing top-tier talent. The Steelers are in dire need of help at wide receiver after last season's debacle at the position. Expect this to be a major focus in free agency and early in the NFL Draft, potentially the top priority if George Pickens isn't on the roster by draft day. With that in mind, the Steelers select Matthew Golden, one of the premier WR prospects in this year's class out of Texas. Golden's versatility allows him to line up anywhere on the field, and he's poised to be a day-one playmaker, regardless of who's under center. The Steelers trade back, sending their 52nd and 122nd picks to the Commanders in exchange for Washington's second-round pick and an additional third-round selection. With their new second-round pick, Pittsburgh bolsters its defensive line by selecting T.J. Sanders from South Carolina. After an impressive Senior Bowl performance, Sanders emerges as a strong addition to a unit in need of youth and depth. This move also allows the Steelers to shift Keanu Benton to defensive end, addressing a key need in their defensive front. Cornerback remains a key position of need for the Steelers, especially with Dante Jackson likely to test free agency and land elsewhere. This creates a significant void opposite Joey Porter Jr., making it a priority for the team to add a veteran starting corner. While the Steelers are high on Corey Trice Jr. and view him as a potential starter, his injury history raises concerns, and the unit desperately needs depth. Enter Z.Y. Alexander from LSU, a cornerback who fits the Steelers' ideal profile. With the size, length, and ball skills they covet, Alexander's background as a former wide receiver gives him a natural playmaking ability that could bolster the secondary. The Steelers take a big swing at quarterback, selecting Will Howard out of Ohio State, fresh off leading his team to a national championship. While many expected Howard to go earlier in the second round, he surprisingly fell into Pittsburgh's lap in the third. With the Steelers' quarterback situation still uncertain, whether it's Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, or another option yet to be signed, the team is once again tasked with rebuilding its QB room. Howard has the potential to be a strong backup but also possesses the upside to develop into their long-term starter. Pittsburgh knows it must explore every possible option under center, and drafting Howard is another step in that process. With Najee Harris likely departing in free agency, the Steelers will be in the market for a complementary running back behind Jaylen Warren. Fortunately, this year's draft class is deep at the position, and they could find great value in the fifth round with Devin Neal. The well-rounded RB brings versatility, elusiveness, and the speed to be a dynamic playmaker in Pittsburgh's offense. Neal also impressed at the Senior Bowl, boosting his stock significantly. While he could be taken well before the fifth round, if he slips to day 3, the Steelers would be wise to snatch him up. The 2024 Philadelphia Eagles are everything the Pittsburgh Steelers wished they were. It's been just days since the Philadelphia Eagles stunned with a 40-22 win over the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59, defeating the team that, throughout each of the past 3 seasons, has felt unbeatable, especially in the postseason. How did Nick Sirianni and company bring down Andy Reid and the big bad Patrick Mahomes? Well, it was a recipe that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been tinkering with since the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger, a family recipe, handed down from a previous generation of Super Bowl winners in the 1970s, the Great Steel Curtain. The recipe itself is simple: play possession-down football, be physical, allow the run game to dictate every conversation, and don't turn the ball over. The Eagles checked every one of those boxes. They led the NFL through the regular and postseason with an average time of possession of 32:21, while averaging the second most rushing yards per game, 184.1, and fourth fewest turnovers per game, 0.8. So, why did the Steelers and Eagles have such different outcomes? The devil's in the details. the Steelers have certainly tried to accomplish this brand of football. In 2021, the Steelers drafted running back Najee Harris in the first round, prepared to place their offensive identity straight on his back just as the team was ushered out of the Ben Roethlisberger era. The problem? They didn't have the offensive line to establish an efficient and physical run game. The Steelers have since tried to upgrade up front, but unfortunately building an imposing offensive line takes time. The investment in the trenches did begin soon in GM Omar Khan's regime, drafting developmental OT Broderick Jones and blocking TE Darnell Washington in 2023, followed by 3 OL selections in the first 4 rounds of the 2024 NFL Draft. But still, despite those investments, the coaching didn't seem to be enough to bring the unit up to par. Under OL coach Pat Meyer, the team continued to shuffle different combinations at OT all offseason between veteran Dan Moore Jr., coming off a truly disastrous 2023 campaign, second-year OT Broderick Jones and rookie Troy Fautanu. The Steelers failed to ever truly commit to one OL configuration during the offseason, instead opting for versatility. No doubt, that versatility came in handy when injuries began to pile up, but it's difficult to imagine that it didn't come at the cost of the development of their first-round developmental tackle. Finally, there was the investment in the defense. After leading the league in offensive spending in the 2017 season, the Steelers had entirely flipped the script, diverting most of their financial resources to the defense. Soon enough, 2022, defensive stars TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, and Minkah Fitzpatrick were leading the roster in salary cap hit, and financial investment on offense took a significant downturn. Pittsburgh would go on to lead the NFL in defensive spending in the 2022, 2023, and 2024 seasons. And while the talent level on defense has been supreme, it's continued to feel like it's been a struggle to achieve consistency beyond the propensity for creating splash plays and turnovers. So where does that leave us? How have the Steelers' attempts to achieve Mike Tomlin's vision failed in comparison to what the Eagles have built with a series of crafty draft picks, contract maneuvers, and free agency signings? Well, some of it seems to come down to the timing just as much as it does the execution. For example, the Eagles' addition of star Saquon Barkley, and the significant price tag that came with it, was well-timed compared to the addition of Najee Harris. Barkley wasn't coming in to change the trajectory of the offense like Harris was. The Eagles were already a run-centric offense with an established defensive line and a complementary quarterback capable of doing his own damage on the ground. The defense they went on to build complemented the run just as well. It was Mike Tomlin's vision, executed to perfection from a timing perspective. Now, to execute the timing of it all, you need the right front office. You need the right coach. You need the right scouts. You need the right assistants. And while the Steelers have some key heavy hitters in those departments like Tomlin and Khan, the lack of urgency to move on from assistants that aren't up to par has all but doomed this franchise to its lack of progress for the foreseeable future. Since the Steelers' last playoff win in the 2016 season, the Eagles have won 2 Super Bowls with 2 different head coaches, Doug Peterson and Nick Sirianni, and 2 different quarterbacks, Nick Foles and Jalen Hurts. They've had 5 different offensive coordinators and 4 defensive coordinators in that span. In fact, the Eagles had fired both their offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson, and defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, ahead of the 2024 season after an 11-6 campaign that resulted in a wild-card loss because that just wasn't good enough. It's that mentality that sets the Eagles apart from the Steelers, the tweaks in coordinators. Time and time again, we've seen underperforming assistants, Matt Canada, Terrell Austin, Pat Meyer, stick around well after it appeared their time with the black and gold should have been up. And that's not to say that turnover for turnover's sake is the goal, but the urgency to find the right supporting staff just isn't there. The organization instead typically opts to let an assistant's contract expire rather than get a head start on finding the next best person to do the job. Though organizational stability is something that should be highly valued, the process of evaluating coaching fits, and the ability to move on quickly when the fit isn't there, feels as though it should be expedited more quickly beyond what the Steelers have achieved in recent seasons. If the Pittsburgh Steelers can manage these tweaks, and with Khan and Tomlin at the head of it all, then the path to a Super Bowl with this formula is, indeed, possible. The 2024 Philadelphia Eagles were living proof of that. The Steelers are looking to make a blockbuster trade at quarterback this offseason. Let's call it what it is. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been about average for most of Mike Tomlin's tenure with the organization, especially on the offensive side of the football. One thing that has stayed constant during Tomlin's time in charge is that the quarterback position has been a massive area of need since Ben Roethlisberger started to decline and eventually retired from the NFL. There's been countless experiments by the organization with Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and others, but none of them have been the player the Steelers needed them to be in order to take over the reins in a long-term capacity. That's why a report from Ryan Burr has the NFL world's heads turning over a rumor that Pittsburgh has inquired with the Jacksonville Jaguars about the availability of Trevor Lawrence this offseason. There's certainly a lot to unpack here, especially given the fact that Lawrence literally just signed a long-term extension with the Jaguars and is one of the few franchise pieces the AFC team has in place on offense besides rookie wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Etienne. New head coach Liam Cohen even went out of his way during his opening press conference to reiterate that Lawrence would be the focal point of the Jaguars' offense moving forward, which obviously makes sense given how much the team has invested in him. Lawrence signed a 5-year, $275 million deal last year, which Pittsburgh would have to take on, in addition to giving up significant draft capital just 1 year away from when the city hosts the NFL Draft in 2026. Related, ranking the Eagles' best matchups for Week 1 next season. Even if Lawrence hasn't been close to an all-pro level quarterback at this stage of his career, it's still very likely that Jacksonville would need a minimum of a first-round pick and several other high draft picks to even start a conversation with the Steelers. And are you a fan? What do you think of Trevor Lawrence's situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.